What's up, y'all? This is the Ahead of the Game podcast. I'm your host, James Oxford, and today I have Jackson McGuire here with me to discuss a new metric he created, points over expected, and the article up on our Medium, along with the spreadsheet, will be linked in the description. So before we jump into the discussion, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, along with a like and a share on the video, and leave a comment to help us in the algorithm. Now, Jackson, tell us about points over expected. How did it come from conception of the idea to the final product we now have in front of us?
Yeah, so as I've learned more about one metric statistics, RAPM has definitely become my favorite because it doesn't have a lot of biases that other one metric statistics, such as box plus minus or estimated plus minus, which definitely still have their uses, but RAPM has definitely become my favorite. So when we think of points over expected, what I did was I found the expected RAPM for every player based on what percent of the salary cap they were holding. So this would apply to any year, and you could take the contract, and then you could take the salary cap, see what percent of the contract or salary cap they're holding, and then find their expected RAPM, which then I would compare to their actual RAPM. So I used three different estimates of RAPM because different estimates will come up with slightly different variations, and I came up with the average RAPM out of these three estimates. Then I did the average RAPM minus the expected RAPM based on the contract, and I came up with points over expected.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I think the big kind of tool for the metric you created is finding value with the contracts. So one thing we were talking about as you were kind of building this was how rookies perform so well by this
Yeah,
metric. And I think there's obviously value to drafting well because then you get those possibly productive players on those cheap contracts. Now,
yeah.
that
So
is kind of an argument. I know some people are going away from picking 3 or 4 year guys because they're saying, they're almost a finished product. I'm not a believer in that by any means, anyways, that kind of thought process. But will this kind of analysis maybe give more credence to picking those guys that are ready to contribute if you're a team maybe that thinks they can compete for, conference championship, whatever it may be, just knowing how valuable an instant impact on a cheap contract is?
So yeah, I think especially for contending teams or teams that plan to contend within the next 2 to 3 years, picking these players who really can make a difference is a good strategy. I mean, at the top of my stat, we see guys like Brandon Podemski, uh, and even guys who are not going to be on the rookie contract or not on the rookie contract anymore, but like Franz Wagner, Halliburton, Peyton Pritchard, all these guys. I mean, not that all their teams were competing, but were extreme values. And if you had them on your roster, it would have made it so much easier to build a championship team. And it's hard to keep a championship team together these days. I mean, if you win a championship, you're likely going to lose a player or two to free agency that's crucial to the team. I mean, like Bruce Brown of the Nuggets, for example. So finding guys that you can hold for multiple years at these lower contracts and with these value deals is extremely important. But on the other end, it's not like rookies are just jacking up the value of these contracts because some of the worst players in this points over expected are also rookies because rookies are usually pretty bad. So
Hmm.
it is important to find good rookies, and for some teams it does make sense to find guys that just can make an impact right away. I mean, just looking at the statistic now, Nikola Jovic was near the top in the top 50, and Jalen Williams on getting less than 2 million a year last year. Vince Williams was on, I don't know if that's technically a rookie deal, but getting minuscule amounts of money for what they were producing, and definitely could have helped a contending team win and meet the salary cap thresholds.
Yeah, and what you're talking about with usually teams who win, they lose a player. It's so true because it's almost a science how you have to line up the contracts
Yeah,
and how they line up, along with the skill sets also, because it can't just be a contract game. The skill sets have to line up on the court
yeah,
also. As
exactly.
much as we like to think you put two guys that are +3 together, you have a +6. Sometimes those skill sets don't
Yeah,
mesh.
it
So
doesn't always mess up.
exactly. So what the Celtics did right now, where they just won a championship, and now I think that a lot of people would say they're kind of the favorites going into this year. If not favorites,
100%.
then
Yeah,
yeah, then it's just so impressive because
yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what their contract situation looks like past this year, but if you can give yourself a 3 year window where you're a favorite like that, that's just blows my mind, really. So
Yeah, Celtics did a great job. We see Derek White making definitely a solid bump, but would still definitely be much better than his contract implies. And then guys like Pritchard and Sam Hauser not making that much money. And then now they have Baylor Shireman, who could potentially also be an impact player, a guy I definitely really liked out of college.
now I think one thing that's interesting, if teams were to use this as kind of a tool to evaluate free agents, this is something that might not necessarily carry over for some of these guys on rookie contracts because they played this well on the small contracts. They get the big contract. Now suddenly they may be on value, which is still
Yeah.
good to have on value contracts. But it is something to think about. So when you have guys that are already on those big money contracts that are also scoring well, guys like I'm looking at Brunson, Anobi, and Anobi, like to be
Yeah.
a high money player and still grade out well on this, really should give confidence to another team next time they're in free agency that it is good money. Brunson obviously has concerns of his own as he ages with size and whatnot, but I think it is kind of telling the guys that are on big contracts and scoring well in this are guys that probably are going to carry over value regardless of what situation they're in.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I really feel like the most obviously it's important to find players with on little deals that provide value, so 2 to 3 million getting positive wrap-ups. But I think the honestly the most important part is just finding guys that are overvalued because guys like say Zach LaVine, for example, could really ruin a contender, giving him the
Hmm.
amount of money, giving him 40 million a year last year for negative 2.74 wrap-em is regardless of if Levine is actually negative at a value of negative 2.74 and maybe -1 or even zero, that's still terrible value. And it's really tough to build a championship level team when you're giving a guy 40 million and he's bad. That's one
Absolutely.
example. Bradley Beal getting 46 million is also not good, and it makes it a lot harder to win a championship when he had an average rap of negative zero point 0.7. I know a lot of people will probably say Beal's not a negative. I mean, regardless if that's true, maybe he's a slight positive. It's still not a good deal. And just those types of deals make it hard to win a championship, to say the least. If you have a guy -7 wrap him, but he's getting paid 1 million, I mean, yeah, the guy sucks, but you just don't play him and you're not really losing that much value overall.
Right. 100%. And that's the big thing. When these rookies don't pan out, you just don't play them and it's not a big cost to your team. What is he, the 11th, 12th man on your team anyway?
Yeah.
And then when they do pay off big early, before you got to, reach into your wallet and really pay them, that's
Yeah.
when like the big fines are. And I feel like I haven't done a study. Maybe I will go back and look at championship teams. I'd imagine probably every championship team has at least two guys that grade out exceptionally well on cheaper contracts. I'll say contracts that are limited by the salary cap in ways that are extremely limiting. Max contract guys, yes, the salary cap does limit what they can pay, but realistically, how much would they get paid? For a lot of those guys, it's probably close, I would
It would,
say.
it would be interesting to see how much some of these guys got paid without max contracts.
Oh,
I mean, if there,
absolutely.
there was no limit to how much a team could give one player. I think that'd be pretty interesting actually.
I would actually like to see an into the rookie scale deals, and it's something that would actually, I think, possibly be something the NBA Players Association would like to maybe look at if they can get rid of max contracts because the NBA Players Association isn't looking out for future players. They're looking out for current players. So why would they
Yeah.
not be okay with giving up the
Yeah.
rookie scale contracts, right? That's not a huge bargaining chip for them.
I mean,
Their guys already got paid.
for me, it would be interesting. Like, how much would Jokic get paid if? I mean, there's still a salary cap, but if there was no max contracts,
Right. Correct. Right. It's a super interesting idea. I think that the amount of haves and have-nots we would see would greatly increase. There would be super teams based in LA that are going to be able to just make money regardless of how much they're paying, even if they're getting hit by the second apron taxes, which are ridiculous.
yeah,
Uh,
it's true. But I mean, they still there's still certain rules they have to follow, even if they're in the second apron. They can't just sign five guys to $50 million deals, even if
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think that some of these teams that are breaking up because owners are looking forward and
Yeah,
seeing it.
cheaper deals. Mhm.
Those teams wouldn't be breaking up necessarily because, like, yeah, I can go ahead and pay these cheaper deals out, and yeah, I'm gonna have to pay some money. But at the end of the day, if you're in a bigger market like LA, I think definitely would be able to do fine. Either Lakers or Clippers, but obviously Lakers have a head start on marketing over the Clippers.
Yeah. I mean, just
Uh,
looking like at next year's draft, I'm not seeing many upperclassmen, but I mean, maybe a guy like Johnny Broom could be a pretty solid value in the late first or early second. Ryan Kalkbrenner potentially, some older
mhm.
guys who who could possibly come in and be, I'm not going to say zeros, but slight negatives, which is still better than rotation and still in the rotation for most teams. I mean, pretty much every team.
Yeah,
So
replacement value is below
is
zero, isn't it?
yeah, I replacement value I found was what did I say? I gave a replacement is negative 1.38 would in my metric would technically be replacement. So,
Okay.
finding a guy at zero Raplem at the beginning of the second round or mid second round is incredible value. And I
Mhm.
think a guy like Kalkbrenner could be, better than that. Johnny Broom definitely. I don't know about Caravan, but potentially JT Toppin. We'll see what happens next year, and definitely some upperclassmen that teams could look at as they try to win a championship and really try to enhance the value of their contracts.
I agree. Were there any other aspects of the metric you wanted to get into?
So yeah, obviously young players are going to improve. So just because one guy had to wrap them this year, I mean, obviously you have to project some growth for younger players, and then at some age you have to project a decline for older players. So that has to be factored in when considering the next year. And then I also just want to mention I did not do this yet, but you could back it out the opposite way and find what a player is worth by, taking their wrap them and then seeing what type of salary cap
Mm.
they should, or what type of contract they should really be getting, or what they're worth that season in theory.
Now that is a super interesting tool if you were to pitch that to teams, I think.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, and if you created some models and you could get an estimate of how players get better at certain ages and what age they start declining, you could probably come up with a fairly accurate representation. And especially if you use past years to wrap them as well, you come up with an even better model to predict, what type of value players should be getting.
all right, you heard it here first. NBA execs hire Jackson. He will give you smart decisions to make in the offseason.
That'd be nice.
That's the goal here, man. All right. Well, Jackson, thank you for enlightening our audience on the new metric points over expected.
Of course. Hope
I'm
to
hoping to
publish
see it
something
spread like
soon.
wildfire out here.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, if you're still here, make sure to like the video, share it out, subscribe to the channel, and have a blessed day.